Mayihlome Tshwete. So the reason I actually invited you onto this platform because I want on a public platform for you to confess to the world that I'm a better touch rugby player than you, and you look up to me, and I mentor you.
How do
as
I
a
look up
lighting.
to you when I'm older than you? I'm like 40 this year, and you like what,
Jesus
20?
Christ, you're old.
I'm very old, bro.
Welcome to the show, bro, and I really appreciate you coming through.
Thank you for having me.
We played touch rugby together. That's where I met you, but you're an enigma in yourself, and I'm hoping we can unpack the layers today. First and foremost, your love for rugby, where you grew up, because I know at some point you lived in the Eastern Cape and then you lived in the Western Cape.
That's right. So I was born in the Eastern Cape, King Williamstown, and then 1982 we left for Zambia.
Who's we?
My family, because my father was in Lusaka. My mother took us to Lusaka to join him, and we stayed there for a couple of years. We came back in the 90s, and then I went to a typical Eastern Cape school. This is where I got the love for rugby and all the typical colonized sports that were drummed into us. So it's cricket, rugby, boxing, all of the things that an Englishman would enjoy.
It's interesting you say colonized. What was your father doing in Lusaka?
I mean, my father was part of the armed struggle. He was a commissar, and he worked quite closely with Chris Hani. The ANC's base for a lot of their operations was in Lusaka. So he was there because of his political beliefs. A couple of years before that, he had just come out of Robben Island. And he was waiting to come home to enjoy a democratic South Africa.
How wild is it having such an influential dad? I don't want to make this an interview, man. I don't want to make this an interview, but I wanna find out just about your family life.
Well, my old man Pen raised me in a very complicated way. I think he was a purist in the sense of social activism. He really, probably to the extent of being, and not to be offensive, to the extent of being naive.
Okay.
So I think he was a purist in the sense that he never wanted his family to think whatever he achieved in politics is theirs to celebrate. So how he raised us in the house was that he didn't say, I'm this person, I'm a minister, or I'm a political activist. He didn't do it like that. And then there was obviously his sidekick, my mother, who would remind us that any success my father has nothing to do with us. We have to make our own names. And so it was drummed into us in that sense that they were very purist in the sense of not trying to extend his greatness and us benefiting from his greatness, which was why I said it was probably a bit naive and purist, which is a good thing. It doesn't really exist anymore.
How long did you guys stay in Zambia?
About 8 years.
That's long. At what age did you leave Zambia?
I was about 7 or something.
Oh, you're still relatively young.
I was. Okay. I'm still relatively young now, bro.
No, fair enough. But of course, not a toddler.
Yeah, no, not.
Where did you study in the Eastern Cape? And then after Zambia, why did you guys move to the Western Cape?
I studied in Dale College.
Oh, yes.
Malusi. So it was like 91. And then the ANC was pretty hyped up on this idea of reconciliation at the time. And the thinking my parents had was that send the chaps, me, my sisters, my cousins, to a white school. Let them interact with white people, get them ready for what will be the Rainbow Nation. So they sent us to these schools, and we were in most of the schools that my siblings went to were the few black guys that were there. So we did that for a considerably long time until I moved to Western Cape because I just wanted a different experience, I guess.
You wanted?
Yes, I insisted to my dad that I want to move when I was about 14 or 15 or something.
That's a privilege, right?
I guess it is, yeah. I guess it is.
And your dad was fine with sending you off?
No, he fought. He my old man was a very traditional fellow. He liked small towns and he wanted his kids to stay in small areas. He thought big towns corrupt kids and all those things. So he was against me going to the Western Cape.
Sure. And then you get there and you study where?
Wynberg Boys, another Model C.
How was life at One Big Boys? How was life in Cape Town?
Same vibe. You've been to these Model C schools now. I can tell by
This is
your
not
accent.
about me?
No, it's about both of us. I can tell by your accent that you're a Model C boy. So they are literally the same thing in different provinces. Dale, Weinberg, JP, any of these other schools are the same thing. So same vibe. Big history. They try make the modern Englishman out of all of us.
The modern Englishman.
Yeah.
It's coming across as if you've got a pain, slight pain. Speak about colonized sports being turned into a modern white person Englishman. Is that a pain, or are you just
It's not
taking the mickey?
It's I think it's a pain for you more than it is for me.
Okay.
I've accepted it. We are modernized, and our African history is, in terms of how we live it out, is probably not something that's going to come back anytime soon. I've accepted that. Celebrating the history is one thing, but I'm saying how we live is probably not the way we think Africans should be living, and I've accepted that. So I'm not at pains at all.
Do you wish we could be more, I don't know if African or decolonized is the term. I mean, Iforte back in the day was like the tertiary institution,
right,
where the leaders of the day came from. When you look at schools like Dale College, maybe a Queen's College, for people like myself that watch from a distance, you almost feel like those could have been the premier black schools in the country. When you speak Hilton, Michaelhouse, Dale and Queens could have gone to that level. So the potential leaders of the future could have come from there.
Absolutely. But even that blackness is still colonized. I mean, Forte, University of Forte is built on English principles. Dale is built on English principles. So even if they were black schools, it would be black, modernized, colonized schools. And so the colonization is still there, and we must just accept it. We are what we are. But in terms of black excellence, I think it's a wasted opportunity for those schools. I mean, it would have been great to have Dale being a black sporting school with excellence coming out of it. The same way you have a lot of Afrikaans schools that have Afrikaans kids that come out of there, and they take great pride in that.
Yeah.
Forte, same thing. I think we fumbled the bag on some of these institutions in terms of making them a representation of black excellence.
Who failed? And is there a way to fix it today?
Yeah.
And do we even need black institutions of excellence?
I think we do. I mean, I think the mistake we make is that if you come out of trauma, people assume that you shouldn't go through some sort of a therapy process. And you being a tough Zulu guy, I'm sure you think therapy is a bit of a soft thing to do. But black people went through trauma, right, for a considerable amount of time. And it's almost silly for us to assume that our mentality and our thinking hasn't been changed as a result of the trauma that we went through. Yeah. The trauma was also on the part of the apartheid government conditioning. So if you ask me who fumbled the bag, I think it's the people that were trying to be leaders but hadn't processed their trauma. So I don't think they were equipped to make these type of institutions the black excellence institutions they should have been because of their mentality. Do we need black excellence? Yeah. Hell yeah.
But that's isolated in an institution.
Hell yeah. Institutions, businesses, even households, political names, brands, we need it. It's a very important thing, man. You can't grow up in a society where you are not represented. You're only represented in crime stats and unemployment stats. That's not normal. So I think black excellence has to be represented in all spheres of society. Okay. Schooling, business, everything.
Do you think that's part of your responsibility? There's a term, I don't even know if it's a real term, I call legacy kids. Yourself being the son of Steve Tshwete, if you look at Jacob Zuma's children, if you look at the children and the grandchildren of Nelson Mandela, etc., the Sisulus, do you guys not have a responsibility to take the baton from your parents and move on?
No, it's not a family business. It's not a family business.
Why is it not?
No, man. I mean, my old man did what he did because of his convictions.
Mm.
There was no consultation with the family that, guys, I'm going to do this, and then we voted. There was none of that. It was his decision, and earlier we spoke about that. His greatness is his. So there's no responsibility for the kids of great leaders to now continue that.
Mm.
I think as Black people, there's a responsibility to be great.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to come from political kids.
Mm.
So the responsibility these legacy kids have is to just do well and to, if they can, carry the names in a dignified manner and do well. It doesn't have to be in politics. I don't understand that thing. Personally, I don't think I could do it.
Politics?
No, I mean to follow, if my father was the most amazing basketball player ever, I don't think I could now want to be a basketball player, and follow that. I think being excellent at something else is good. So I mean, imagine being Nelson Mandela's children.
Mm.
And all that weight on your shoulders, like what are you going to achieve that your old man hasn't achieved? How are they going to refer to you differently as opposed to your old man? It's such a tough task, and I admire Mandla and the guys that try, contribute to the political discourse. But for me personally, I don't think it's something that I put burden on myself to try and now be the next Steve Tshwete. I don't have that pressure at all. Also because I had that conversation with my old man, and he was like, never get into politics.
Never?
Yeah, he was like, it's trash. Never get into politics. I didn't struggle so you could now also be a politician. Go become a lawyer. Go become a businessman. Go become a sportsman. Just excel in whatever you want to do. Don't feel that because you have my surname, now you must do the same thing I did.
Do you think there's a psychological... You spoke about the weight of being like a Nelson Mandela descendant. Do you think there's a psychological thing that hits some of these kids? You've heard of some of the grandkids shoplifting.
Shoplifting?
Yes.
Who was shoplifting?
I'm not going to mention the name. It's on Google.
You're accusing people of shoplifting.
There's Google articles. I don't know this gent's name, but he's one of the grandkids. I don't know if he's a kleptomaniac or what he is.
I don't know. Okay.
Do you think it fucks with their heads? Everywhere you walk, Nelson Mandela was your father, your grandfather, and you're trying to live a normal life.
How can it not? It's nuts. I mean, I think when time passes, we sometimes forget the euphoria around the ANC in the early 90s. Nelson Mandela was literally a political rock star.
Yeah.
So how can it, everywhere you go, you're being compared to that. I don't envy them. And I think for the most part, they've tried to carry it well.
Mm.
I think it must mess with your head in some way or another.
I watch a lot of Hani Fasi. Speaks a lot about his mamu Prenda. And a lot of what I hear is the pain and just that everywhere he goes, it's still Prenda Fas.
Imagine. Prenda
Fas. And it looks like it affects him psychologically.
It's even worse when there's tragedy.
Yeah.
One of my friends is Hani, who is the daughter of Chris Hani.
Mm. So
you have this great name, but you also have the tragedy of how it ended, So I really think people that can carry those names are really strong, and I think my situation is a bit lighter than some people, because I don't have that severe tragedy and that size of a name. I know my father was a great person, but Nelson Mandela, Chris Hani, or Tambo, Walter Sisulu, these are powerful names, and to try compete with that must be a burden on your life.
You don't think your father is at that level? Because I do.
No, I do, but so I think my father was the most amazing person, but I'm talking about how society celebrates you.
Yeah.
So if you say Steve Tshwete versus saying Walter Sisulu, I think Walter Sisulu will probably ring more to more people, but in terms of celebrating him, he was the greatest man ever, but the bigger the name, the bigger the burden.
Mm. No, two things. I found out this week, we think we're politically literate and we know our history. I found out this week that Chris Hani, Chris wasn't his real name. Begu Martin Timbisile, I believe. Right. I think Chris may have been his brother or someone in his family.
That's right.
And he used it as a way, obviously, because he was a targeted man,
And the time, my dad's name was Steve. The time was you had to have an English name.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys had an English name.
But his name was Martin. It wasn't Chris. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was. But all of the guys had these English names.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I found out about that. The other thing I was thinking about was, you're speaking about your dad saying don't go into politics. I once sat with 2 of Jacob Zuma's children, and they happen to be the children of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma as well. And you ask them, like,
double greatness.
Double greatness. Double greatness. So surely at home, you guys are speaking politics and history, and they were like, never. Your parents, they're like, the only time we'd see our parents maybe speaking, doing politics was on TV with everyone else. And the one lady literally said, I didn't even know black history until I got to tertiary. I dated white guys in school. When I got to tertiary, I fucking hated white people. I was like, why did my parents not tell me about this bullshit? How much sheltering do you think you had from the realities, and what role do you think your mom played in your upbringing?
I wonder. That's such a good question. Yes, it's Penuel. You can be smart. you have moments of intelligence.
Oh, shut up. I do this on the touch rugby field every week.
Please. Fuck, that's, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
you don't have to rush. Take a moment and think.
Does your father or your mother, if they have political views, begin conditioning you as a young person to share their political views, or do they allow you to grow and create your own political views? So I think people do it differently. I think some political families prefer to allow the child to grow and establish his own political views.
Yeah.
I don't think my father came and said, this is the ANC and yada yada, and you must do this. And so I don't have that upbringing. I was never coached or conditioned to have a political view.
Were you close to him? Did you guys spend enough time together?
No, it wasn't that type of vibe, bro. It was
like, just a normal black timer.
Exactly. He wasn't like, I'm very fuzzy with my kids. Like I hang out with my kids, I wake up, I hug them. He wasn't that kind of guy.
Sure.
So, and he had a worse relationship with his father.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think he thought he was soft, but he wasn't. I can imagine. Yeah, he wasn't that kind of guy.
So he never sculpted your political ideologies?
No.
You know, one of my concerns with our parents, and I've judged them, but I know it's unfair, is they send us to the Dales, to the Newcastle Highs, and it's the sending your children to Caesar, and you're surprised when they come back as Romans, the colonized.
Did you come back as a
English? Roman? Here we are speaking English, bro. But we're here speaking English, fancy English at that. The danger of giving your children that freedom, because that's what they were fighting for. Be free, mingle with other races. This is what we're fighting for. But you might end up getting a child who ends up looking down on the family and what the family does. You may have come back from Weinberg and said, my dad does the slaughtering thing, which makes me cringe, and I don't want to bring my mates.
SPCA, come on, where's the animal rights? Yeah. I think our parents, if we compare our parents to their white counterparts, their white counterparts internalize the conditioning of their children more than they do.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to be offensive to anyone. I think that's why you're probably more likely to get a white kid that's 6 years old that's race conscious more than a black kid.
Yeah.
Because the white household conditions and, tells their children about their history and who they are and where they come from, and conditions their kids to think a certain way, whether they do it deliberately to them or maybe because the dad is watching news and he says, there's that idiot, that ANC fool. They condition their kids in a certain direction. I don't know which one is better, but I can agree with you that there's a great danger in sending your kid into an environment without giving him some context of that.
Yeah.
I was actually having a discussion with somebody this week about that in 91, it wasn't the new South Africa, it was still apartheid.
Yeah.
And my old man sends me to what is a white school and doesn't give me any sort of brief. At the same time, I understand, man, like why would you tell a 7-year-old, just be careful of Just be careful.
Watch out for the innuendos and the nuances and the undertones.
Because this is a problem. If he gets there and he doesn't know how to manage the information you've given him, he's going to get himself into more trouble than if you had not.
That is true.
Yeah. So if you
a conscious black child, especially back then, was in danger.
Yeah, he was gonna get into more shit than a kid who just went in there thinking that everyone's equal and the world is balanced. But my gripe is that I don't know if I was naughty, but I used to get picked on a lot, man, like by the teachers.
Yeah.
So I can never decide if it's because I was a naughty kid or there was an element of this is this person's kid, and we're gonna show them.
Yeah.
And you know, when my parents were always called to school, they always took the teacher side and the establishment side. They weren't like the white kids when you call them in, they came in there and said, "No, what do you want my child to do? I pay school fees."
White parents come guns blazing.
Don't call me for nonsense. I pay school fees. You take care of them. My parents would come and be like, "Dude, you're embarrassing us. I want to deal with you when we get home." So I don't know which one is better, to be honest with you. I mean, I have kids now, and I don't prepare them in terms of having an in-depth conversation about politics and race. I don't condition them on race issues.
I'm big on intentional parenting.
So you do that?
I'm trying to do that. I'm saying this because when you do study the world, and this now speaks also to your dad, when you were saying politics is not a family business, and I'm thinking in my head, it should be. When you look at what I call successful families, communities, a lot of them are very intentional in what they do.
Right.
So we speak about white people and how they condition their kids. If you look at the Indian Muslims in this country, they don't even play games. The kids finish school and they go to madrasa, and they're being taught the Islamic way of life. Mm-hmm. So even when they come to school and you're like, "Hey, here, have a bacon sandwich," they're like, "No, that's haram. I don't," because they are intentionally every single day conditioned.
That's right.
Because I guess the parents feel they know what's best. Our parents obviously didn't know. They didn't know, man. All they knew is this can't be it. We want better. And to them, better was uphila njengabelungu. And when you send your kids out there, of course, some of their friends, some of the neighbors, because they had Julius Malema antics of when they get to an establishment, "You can't speak like this to me. You are racist." They know that child might get killed when they leave school.
Right.
So that's why they didn't want to give us that, I don't know what you'd call it, but that fire when you go to school. But at the same time, they didn't know what they were doing. So it's scary. But for me now, I think some of us are a bit more conscious, a bit more smarter, and it is important to arm our kids because
so what do you
there are children that are carrying anger and trauma today because of how they were treated at school. They may have not been good academically, they may have not been good on the sports field. And they always had this complex of, why am I always in detention? Why am I accused of backchatting? Why is the teacher saying I'm being loud when I'm just being audible?
Right.
Versus Mayihlome and Pen, who speak good English, they're amazing at rugby. So they good blacks. I'm a normal black, but that's deemed bad. And maybe it affected my marks. And maybe it affected how my life turned out. And every time my parents were brought in, instead of them having that intelligence and sensitivity to be like, it's probably because we're more African. You know, we're not conditioned like that.
Right.
But the parents don't do that. They literally shout at you. And they tell you, you're embarrassing us. We pay school fees. Why can't you be like Mayihlome? You know, so I worry about that. And I do feel it is important. Your father's right that he was soft because you could probably speak to your dad. Our fathers couldn't speak to their fathers.
No.
You know, so with us, we're hugging our kids. Some guys are like, you kiss your kids.
Yeah.
Later on, we don't even know how that's going to pan out. So it's a tricky world we're living in.
What do you say to a 6-year-old about race relations when you're sending him to a school? I mean, how do you arm or equip that 6-year-old for the world? I mean, it seems a bit, I don't know, it seems a bit, and I might be wrong, it seems a bit premature.
And restrictive.
Yeah, like you arming him and he's literally going to get into a fight.
My firstborn son Nkunzi is 12. He's with his younger sister, Africa, in China with their mom. She's teaching there. We do video chats every week. I asked him if they're being taught about the LGBTQ community, and he said, yeah. How do you feel about it? And I don't know what. So the one thing in China.
Oh, okay.
So they had a private school there. It's an international school, and I normally have to explain to people, China, yo. And I'm like, no, they're not studying at like Iskolo Sekas in South Africa. They like at St. John's or an American school. So they almost sheltered even within that country. They with kids that are international students.
Right.
Parents are diplomats. They're not in the trenches with Chinese kids.
Right.
So to speak. The one thing I've tried to do, because I think I have a curious mind and I've been sensitive and studying since I was young, and I've noticed you've got the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I notice in the conversations we have, in the way you analyze people and you speak to them, that you've also got a sensitivity of studying human nature. And my son in preschool went to a dual medium, English Afrikaans.
Right.
Comes back one day and he says, I want to go to the Afrikaans class. My sister, maybe around the same time, is going into grade 8 at Ferrum High School, which is, it's a Model C, but Amapunu dominate there. Comes home and she says to my mom, I'd like to study in the Afrikaans class. Immediately, because I've now studied history, because I understand psychology and I know why. They don't need to explain it to me. I know it's probably because the white Afrikaans kids are being treated better. They're probably getting better marks. Probably all the kids you're playing in the rugby team or the hockey team with are probably in the Afrikaans class. And you're like, if this is what's best, then why am I not here? So I've been sensitive in just having the conversations. What's happening at school? What happened? I heard a child was expelled. Why? Hey, I don't know, Dad. He was just being a nuisance. And my son, Ushaga, now, on a 5, his mom was telling me a story. And, this is part of now not living with your kids.
Why not name your kid after some Xhosa general? Why did you have to pick?
Because the Xhosas are just an inferior... I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Good luck. But the Xhosa was just going to come for you.
No, I'm kidding. I'm an honorary Xhosa, I'd like to think, especially because of rugby. But look, anyways, Ushaga is 5. His mom tells me a story of how they took him to a kiddie's birthday party and Ushaga says to his mom, I don't want to play with the brown kids.
Whoa. Your kid say he doesn't want to play with them? Damn.
So you can imagine, for me, we need to have a conversation.
That is
I need to find out why not. My mom taught her, now I'm speaking. And we're not even here for me.
I've got a point on that, because if a system rewards a certain type of language, a certain type of look, would your kid not be not the smartest kid if he wanted to go to a system that doesn't reward you? So if the system says, if you speak this language, you have a higher probability of getting a job, why would you encourage your kid to learn any other language but the one that's going to be giving him a job? The system is set up and it incentivizes you if you play its game. So it's unfortunate that they do that to kids at such a young age, and they are making them choose that they want to be part of the system, and they'll play the game. They'll learn the language that they need to learn. They'll play with the kids that they need to play with. But the system is the one that's making him do that, and that's not his fault. That's Daddy's fault. That's Daddy and Mommy's fault.
I agree.
You put him in that environment, and then he's just trying to survive in that environment.
Yeah, it's a moment of introspection. That's why I said it's sad that I don't live with him.
So did you ask the reasons why he said he doesn't want to play with brown kids?
I didn't need the reasons, but I had the conversation with his mom on the content he's watching, on the conversations they're having, because whether she's aware of it or not, they are the ones priming the space. If, for example, they watch the news and a black person has just been corrupt, a black politician has done something, the criminals are black, and the children are there watching, right. And the mom or the grandmother is saying things like, hey, abantu abamnyama yindaba ethanda ukutshontsha. Why abantu abamnyama? That's all the kid is hearing. I wanted to speak about my mom when I was in primary school, without putting her fully on blast, but I will because it was her. My mom is mixed race. She taught at a township school, eHlalanati, eMadadeni in Newcastle. She would come back, and the way she spoke about black girls, hey, amantombazana abantu abamnyama bayafeba, bayaphuza utshwala. As a young kid in primary school, I wanted nothing to do with black girls, because in my head I'm like, ew. So I wanted to date Angelique and Nicole, and my mom may have not been intending that, but that is what happens, and it becomes a thing.
And that's what I get you. I get your point on deliberate parenting. So deliberate parenting doesn't necessarily have to be having a black consciousness.
Yes, and pushing an agenda.
Yeah. It's just, but this is why I was telling you earlier about the importance of black excellence and representation.
Yeah.
that kids can see black people doing great, that kids can see a cartoon with a black superhero and all those things. I was actually, and you're raising such an important point, because I was like, I put up like a superhero wall in my kid's room.
Yeah.
So I got this company, they came, wall was probably about this size. The guys came, they did their thing. Then I walked in there.
I know where this is
like,
going.
Superman, white.
Boom.
All of them white, silver, white. All of these people were just white. And I was like, damn, I'm also part of the problem, because I'm not creating an environment that he can see black excellence and representation. So now I have to do a whole Black Panther wall, and create superheroes. I even put Shaka there if I have to. So I think representation is such an important thing. Your kids need to see that black people can be great in whatever sphere it is. Yeah. If not, then you can't blame the kid for choosing a system that incentivizes him, that rewards him. Yeah. So I don't blame the kid if he adapts to that environment and wants to learn Afrikaans, because he's trying to survive. He's a smart kid.
Yeah. Look, a smart kid will always move towards the winning team.
Why would he go on the road less traveled and have a tough? It doesn't make sense.
I asked the question earlier. I know you speak very fondly about your mother. You call her comrade.
I do call her comrade. Yeah.
What effect did your mom play in your upbringing?
My mom is tough. Everything my father is, and every path my father walked, my mother walked with her. So if you think my old man is tough, my mother is just as tough. My father was targeted, assassination attempts and all those things. My mother walked the same path. And then I think she has a double trauma, because for the longest time, she always had him in her life, and then he passed away in 2002. So she now had to be the head of the family and lead the Tshwete family. I think she did an amazing job. She toughened up, and she put us on a straight and narrow at a very delicate time in my life. I was 19 at the time. Yeah. And I was pretty angry about my old man passing, because at the time he passed, we weren't really close. And some of the things I was telling myself was that when this guy gets older, me and him will have a better relationship, because we'll be able to converse better. I'm 19.
You thought you had time?
I definitely thought I had time. And then he passed, and then I was a bit mischievous. And then my mother had to play that tough role of putting us on the right path, and I think she did that quite well. So I hold my mother in high regard, and I hold black women in high regard. I think it's probably the most powerful asset that we have in the country is black women.
You're speaking about parents not giving their children an ideology and dictating to them what they should do.
Politically.
Yeah. Maybe in other things as well. Maybe if your dad was working in a mine, maybe he's like, I don't want you down there. Maybe, Yeah. We're in a different time. Our parents come from a different time. Do you think it's important for your partner, your woman, to carry your struggle as well? Do you think your mom did the same? We hear stories of Owini, Abu Albertina and the like. And a lot of their generation, it was like, if Ubaba we pirates, see pirates. If Ubaba we chiefs, see chiefs. So do you feel that your mom may have had dreams, maybe, but she was like, whatever Tshwete wants, this is where we're going?
I think the armed struggle and the liberation movement was very unfair on women. A lot of them joined the movement as a result of the men they fell in love with. Yeah. And the guys didn't come to them and say, this is what's about to go down. This is what the future holds. We're going to go through a lot of difficult periods. My mother was a nurse. She was employed. My dad was unemployed. He was busy with his armed struggle stuff. She left all of that to join whatever he was doing. Fine, it was a decision she took, but he definitely pulled her into a life that she didn't know all the areas about. Yeah. So I think having a partner that's conscious of where you are taking them is well and good. And I think it's important. But I think in my parents' case, a lot of women were hoodwinked into the struggle.
Yeah.
And it was kind of unfair to them, even though they became great people. It was unfair to them. In today's world, I think you'd want to have a partner where you share similar goals. That's the objective. It doesn't have to be political. It could be financial, that you want to achieve the same financial targets and set up your family in the same way. I think a partnership in this regard, is probably the most important thing.
I don't know if you still are married. You were married.
Are you proposing?
To you?
Yeah.
To marry you?
You gotta look in your eye.
Is it making you feel moist? I'm not sure if you're still married or if you're even comfortable speaking about it. I just wanted to ask with your partner, because she was a great woman in her own right, and she had her own huge profile.
Right.
How that impacted you, and if you guys feel you had a joint vision, or if each person was just doing their own greatness.
No, I'm not married anymore. I was lucky to have married an amazing woman, and I also divorced an amazing woman. Whatever process we went through, the anger, the acceptance, and finally the friendship was helped by the fact that we didn't put it out publicly. And I think I was fortunate in meeting an amazing person such as her, because I've seen people go through this process when a parent. It's the most painful thing ever. And if your person is not kind, if the person doesn't care about your well-being, or at least the child's well-being, which includes you, the child's well-being includes you, even if you claim you care
includes you as the father.
Yeah, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So if you claim, look, we're gonna get divorced, I don't love you anymore, but I still love the child.
Yeah.
If you love the child and the child has a good relationship with the father or the mother, by extension, you have to care about that person. I don't think it's possible to love the child and hate the parent. I don't think it's possible. And I think that dynamic, if you play it like that, that dynamic can put a toxic seed into a family.
Definitely.
So we were fortunate enough to not have that element, and we went through that process. And where we partnered up on, and where we are still partners on is making sure our kids grow up in a healthy environment.
Yeah.
So I think for the most part, in terms of co-parenting, we're doing quite well in that regard, and making sure that we try to raise our son in a very healthy environment.
Well done to both of you.
I mean, well done for divorcing, or for what do you?
Well done on the I personally hate co-parenting, by the way, but well done on the both of you.
What are your what are your reasons? How do you hate something that you have no choice but to do?
So I'll answer that. I want to start with kudos to both of you.
Right.
I personally wish more parents like the two of you could publish. You want to keep things private, but I wish more could publish these type of stories, because it speaks to Black excellence as well.
Right.
That it's not that the only stories we hear of parents is Kelly Kumar and Chub Chub, where Chub Chub can't see his son, who is a spitting image of him. So we want to hear the other stories that Thibaut Touch, and how he's happily co-parenting with his ex-wife, and his ex-wife even has a good relationship with his current wife.
Right.
Because then it tells people there's a different narrative. So kudos to the both of you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you fully answered my question on if you guys had a similar vision outside of now raising the child.
So the similar vision was a healthy family.
Sure. But you were letting her do her thing.
She was doing her thing. I was doing my thing. So a healthy family comes with certain dynamics. You do well in your business. You do well in your broadcasting. Those dynamics are always there.
Yeah.
And they feed into, finances are a part of a healthy family. So they feed into that. So we supported each other in that sense, so that we could create this healthy family. That was probably the only shared objective that we have, was to create a healthy family. I think the worst thing to do is to marry for love.
What does that mean?
I mean, it's like the rand. It's such a volatile emotion.
Yeah.
It's not consistent. Respect is more consistent than love, because love goes up and down. It's by its nature. So to try to build a foundation and a family on something so volatile is problematic, because maybe 10 years down the line, you just look at each other and hey, young Dina Lomdrias. Does that mean
10 years is far? 1 month down the line, Baba.
Yeah, exactly. So now, does that mean your marriage is in question? But if your marriage is built on a different foundation of shared business goals, mutual respect, all these other elements that we take lightly, we think that, oh, this person must sweep me off my feet, and every time I look into her eyes in the morning, the birds are singing. So I was completely in love, and I married for love, and I don't regret it. But I'm saying, I think the foundation for a successful relationship, not just marriage, a relationship is more than love. I think love is cool, but it really can't be the foundation for a relationship.
I wanted to speak about this earlier. I believe she took your surname. I believe she still kept your surname even today. Maybe you can speak to that.
She didn't steal it, Pen. She took my surname. What does that mean?
Just looted the church. The burden of these women, we speak of Winnie Madikizela Mandela,
right.
We speak of Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and it's almost like these women they can never have their own identity on their own. Of course, we come from a different time where women are whatever. Have you ever felt a need to commemorate and raise your mom's name and maiden name, and not just be Steve Tshwete's wife, and then to an extension now with your ex-wife?
That's a good question. I mean,
may I ask what your mom's name and maiden name were or are?
Pamela Zondig.
Pamela Zondig.
Yeah. More prominent for rural.
Yeah.
So the Tshwetes and the Zondigs were quite prominent, and she's still celebrated. But I don't. So the addition of my mother to my father's legacy completely altered his legacy.
Yeah.
So I would argue that she has ownership over the name just as much as he does.
Okay.
She contributed so much to that name, and she made it herself.
Okay.
So if she made a conscious decision to change her surname, it's not something he gave her. It's something she owns now, and it's hers in her own right.
Yeah.
And that by extension also applies to my ex Zizo. So I think if you looked at the both of us, you'd probably argue that she's the talent. You know, she's the better. She's
the talent. She's better looking. She's a greater person. I mean, duh.
No, she's so I don't have this. She does. It's not a name I've given her. It's hers in her own right, and we've never had a discussion about does she want to change it. It's.
Why do you think she's kept your surname?
Because it's hers. It's hers. I mean, her kids' surname have the same surname. We've never had the conversation. I don't think we need to, because she's made it her own, and I don't have a sense of ownership on the Tshwete name. I got married. We made a conscious decision, a consensual one, that we are going to have the same surname.
Yeah.
If things don't work out, you can't now come and say, "Mtana, let's surname." So it's hers. I don't have any IP over it.
Yeah.
And I don't. Yeah.
So to answer your question on co-parenting, I've got 6 children, as you know, 4 mothers.
Cannon.
You know, me and Nick, we WhatsApp here from time to time, and he's like, "I'm on 9, dog, catch up."
He's on 10.
And I'm like, "But what's Elon saying?" Nah, Elon says,
He's on 10, but yeah.
I've got 6 children from 4 mothers, so I'm meant to be co-parenting with 4 different women who have, because I respect women very much.
Right.
And a lot of people, you realize, I guess it's like race. There's this gender thing of patriarchy where it's assumed that as the man, the woman must. Right. I don't. The mothers of my kids, I believe, are their own people. So whatever their views and visions are, it's not like, "But why don't you tell them to?" And I'm like, am I dealing with a child? This is a full human being.
Is that a deviation from inverted commas, the Zulu way?
It is not a Zulu way, and what I'd argue an African way, not deeply African, because if you go deeper in history, there was matriarchy and other things, but the narrow or the shorter history before colonization and apartheid. The man would own the land, the woman would fall under him almost as one of his kids.
Right.
That's why she would take your name. So, for example, your ex-wife wouldn't have been Tshwete. It should have been whatever her name is, Mayihlome.
Right.
You know, so it becomes a deviation in she has her own land, her own house, she does her own thing, etc. Co-parenting, rather, these 4 different women have got different visions for themselves, for their children, who happen to be my children. It's not my vision that I said, listen, once you have ingane yakamlotshwa, ingane zakamlotshwa sigqoka isiphandla. Co-parenting requires a compromise by default.
Exactly.
And I have huge issues with that.
Adulthood.
No, of course.
Requires a compromise.
Compromise and tolerance. Co-parenting requires a compromise of which, in the modern world we're living in, the compromise is usually a westernized TV compromise.
Okay.
The children must go to school, and this school, the kids must be more on medical aid, the kids must speak this language.
Right.
Penuel, my kids can't wear black every day and say Penuel is God and they Penuel. What the hell is that? They must go to church and. Understandably, and if you are an alternative thinker deemed crazy like myself, it becomes difficult.
I don't think you're crazy.
Thank you so much, bro. I appreciate that.
I think you're mischievous, but I don't think you're crazy.
Thank you so much, bro. I appreciate that. So if you've got someone like me who's not trying to be a good Christian and a good Zulu man and the guy who speaks good English and good Afrikaans, and I've got my own thoughts, they deemed alternative. When I come now with my suggestion to the table of where do we meet midway, she's coming from, well, TV says this, I'm coming from left field. She's like, no ways, Baba. Co-parenting requires a compromise, and what I don't want, I do not want to compromise. What I do want is I want us to share.
You don't want to compromise on your ideas.
I don't want to compromise on my ideas and on how I want to raise my kids. Okay. But we're meant to share these kids 50-50.
Right.
In a perfect world. I am happy for your 50% to not be tainted. If you don't want to call your kids umlotshwa, you can call them your surname, they can speak your language, you can go to church and pray before a meal, whatever you want. I will not disturb that. If you want to send them to the naughty corner, don't be like, you know your father, but mom, dad says we must eat meat. What's this vegan? Do your vegan thing. Your kids will know when we're with mom, we're vegans, we go to church, we whatever. It is uncompromised, fully her. When the kids are with me, with my 50%, I want to completely parent the way I want. And if they say mom doesn't believe in hidings because it breeds violence,
it's unconstitutional, by the way. I hope you know that.
It is unconstitutional, but we'll speak about it on another platform. It is unconstitutional. So my issue with co-parenting is just that, because there's this default, and the default is whatever TV and the media and general society. And if you're deviating, Ubaba's a polygamist, Ubaba's Rastafarian, Ubaba's it's ooh. And when you guys maybe split, this is generally what happens with women. She was there, pinging Bawoto, they're holding the fort.
Right.
Because you're in Robben Island. As soon as you guys split, it's like all bets are off. Your dad wanted you, but I'm not with him now. So this is where we are now. Now you're going to Weinberg and you're going to do this and this. So I don't like that.
I would imagine, though, Pen, that when she met you, she knew what your thoughts were and your views on things are. So it's not like when you were together, you were church-going Pen and believed in all number of things, and then when you got separated and tried to co-parent, you just became a completely different person. So I think in your defense, they married you knowing who you are, or let's say they dated you or you had kids together knowing who you are.
Generally. So
the co-parenting shouldn't change who you are and your ideas and your views. So I don't think co-parenting is about that. In my belief, it's about, to the best of your ability, the two of you creating a healthy environment for your kids. That's it. And there might be other dynamics at play that probably aren't even about your political views and such. Maybe you guys are still beefing.
Yeah.
And then that is playing itself out in oh no, I don't want my child going to this school or that school. So if you don't resolve that, then everything else will never play with harmony. Everything else will be disruptive. If you don't resolve the center is the two of you, and you guys having some sense of peace.
Do you agree that generally women have female privilege over children? And generally society deems mom knows best, mom is the nurturer, and whatever you're calling a compromise means, especially for an African man, that you almost need to let go of whatever that means. And for the guy who has been conditioned successfully to kind of be aligned to mom and to, it becomes easier to co-parent. But once you want to all those things which are African and they're yours, that's where a lot of the, because I'm alternative, but I'm speaking about real fights now. A lot of men don't really have a voice in how they want to raise their kids, because normally it's the female template.
In the co-parenting, or you mean even in marriage?
I'm just speaking co-parenting. It's normally a female template that is used as the base. And the men who co-parent successfully are generally the men who are aligned to what women deem a good parent is, which is not toxic masculinity. You're not waving a gun around my kids. You're not swearing and listening to Rick Ross. You're not watching porn and action movies. Let's watch Coco Melon and let's go get ice cream. Let's go cycling. It's like, oh, what a great father.
But I don't know. That's a tough one. I wouldn't say that there's a privilege or inclination that favors women, and I would also say the context is us as men. We haven't exactly showered ourselves in excellence around parenting.
You talk about our fathers or us?
Men.
Okay.
Generally.
Okay.
So you must understand, Pen. People like you are an exception. Quite rare, especially in the black community. A lot of kids are growing up without their fathers. So the dynamic of, I want my child to understand this tradition, that's secondary. You know, that's like that's a privilege of presence.
Yeah.
Because you're present in your kid's life, you want to dictate certain attributes and certain values you want your child to have. The first problem we have in the parenting space is that black men are just non-existent. So the reality is that women are raising the black community more than men are. And then when there's exceptions like you and I, we want to dictate how it should be across the bar. I think if we move across from the general and we go specific, it's that negotiation we spoke about. If you can find a negotiation with her, you can condition your child to whatever values you want to condition them towards. But the issue is always, are you and your ex cool? If you're not, everything plays out in that context. It's not about the tradition, it's not about the school, it's not about church, it's about you guys fighting.
I want to ask a sneaky question, and I hope you'll give me a short answer, if you will even engage the question.
Yeah.
And then I want you to speak about your time at Home Affairs.
Right.
Because now for some of us that looked like, okay, he's now stepping into daddy's shoes.
No.
So we can speak about that. You're saying that largely for the black community, a lot of the fathers are absent.
Right.
We've got a lot of black boys, men who are criminals, smoke nyaupe, become murderers and rapists. A lot of the time we hear it's because of absent dad. Do you agree that it's because dad is absent? Or do you think it's because, to what you said, they're being raised by a woman? And maybe what they're doing are behaviors of a woman in a man's body?
No, it's not behaviors of a woman. It's behaviors of trying to think how a man should behave, because you don't know how a man should behave, because you don't have a man. You don't have a father figure. So it's got nothing to do with the woman. It's more to do with the absence of the father. I think society can be very harsh on a single mom. Society can be very harsh. Not in a brutal way, like full frontal, but in a very subliminal and sneaky way. Like I'll give you an example. I was dragged on Twitter the other day because I said, this thing of Father's Day celebrations at school must end. And everybody, 80% of them didn't have kids, were dragging me. The point I was making, and I was literally coming back from a Father's Day event. And there was mothers there, no father.
Yeah.
And there was grandfathers. And then there was malumes and whatnot. And then the narrative was like, no, there's always a father figure that can step up and, replace the father. But children are not as advanced as we are. And kids can be very brutal with each other. Oh, why is your dad so old?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's not my dad. That's my grandfather. Where's your dad?
Yeah.
Kids will ask, where's your dad?
Where's your dad?
And the kid is not being mean.
Yeah.
And then there's adverts on Father's Day reminding you that you are different. You don't have a father.
Yeah.
So I think to go through life with that has to be traumatic. It has to be traumatic. You must feel different, and you must feel angry. My father was present, but he wasn't around at all my things.
Yeah.
And I felt some type of way about that.
Yeah.
And he was a present father. So there's no way you grow out through life without a father in the picture, and then you come out at 18 and you're well wired. Surely you have some anger and those things play themselves out. That trauma plays itself out, and it's how some men behave. So I don't think it's fair to blame that on women. I think it's mostly a man's problem.
Do you think women are equipped to raise young boys into men?
Yes. It would be better if the father was there.
Would we see something similar happening if young girls were living with their dads and not their moms, where they lash out later and become delinquents of sorts because mom was not around?
It's probable. Whatever society imposes on a child and the child can't understand that he's different can be traumatic. So unless you are consciously parenting in that way we're speaking about, where you make your child understand the context of why we are different, and they are equipped and ready for the world, then that's better. Whether it's a girl or a boy, whether it's a father or a mother, it doesn't fit the norm of what society feeds you or what a normal family is. I even went to them and I was saying at the school, this thing of making kids draw their families is actually nonsense. Because society is imposing on you a nuclear family, mom, dad, daughter, son. We don't come from that. If we had to draw our families, and we're sitting next to our counterparts, white or whatnot, and they have this nucleus family where there's 4 family members, but you have a half brother, half sister, half this, and now you're drawing this, and then the other kid is wondering, hey, bro, who's this? And the kid now has to explain this. So I think it's invasive, and I think you shouldn't impose on kids what society deems as a normal family. If you do that and you don't conscientize your kids to that, then the kid is going to be traumatized, and how it plays out, whether it's violent or they become a delinquent, whether they're a girl or boy, it's gonna happen.
I fully agree on the context, and for me, it's one of the most sensitive conversations. It goes back to where you send your kids to school. If you're sending your child to a school where all the kids come from parents that are monogamous and married, and your child comes from a polygamous family, your child becomes weird and feels some type of way.
Yeah.
If you send your child to a school where all the parents are polygamous, and your parents, it's just mom and dad. Your mom and dad. It's just everyone would be like, what's wrong with your father? Why does he only have one wife? So my concern is, and this is part of what I was saying, is the issue with co-parenting. The context. So with the Zinzi Mandela, my dad is not here because you guys see him on TV. He's out there hustling, or he's LeBron out there playing games.
Right.
My mom and my dad have never explained why my dad's not around. Right. He's not a celebrity. He's not a politician. He's not a whatever. And then number two, you're putting your kids in a space where everyone is asking, what's wrong with you? Where's your father? And even when you go home,
that's traumatic.
That's what builds the trauma, because
that's traumatic, yeah.
Your dad thought he was soft, probably because you guys could speak.
Yeah.
He probably couldn't speak to his dad. And that's not because they were not present. They had a different way of parenting, which today we've changed, it's westernized. And if you as a black man are not there, everyone says, what's wrong with you? Everyone asks.
And you know, but I suppose I'd love to come back for us to have another discussion of westernized versus the African way. So you and me would consider ourselves westernized, and they would consider our parents the African way. But that isn't the African way. The African way was lost a very long time ago. So you can never tell me that growing up in the rural areas in the Eastern Cape in poverty, because rural, when people speak about the countryside, it's mostly agriculture. There's farming, but it's a livelihood that isn't impoverished.
Yeah.
My area where I come from, where my father loved so much, is impoverished. And it's not by accident that they are there. They were placed there in poverty. So I don't subscribe to the notion that all of the culture that grew from a deliberate enslavement is the African way. The relationship that my father had with his father was toxic, probably because of the environment that he was raised in, which was not a good environment. It wasn't an African environment.
I hear you.
It was a bad environment that was filled with Africans.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit more patient with all these things we are discussing, because in truth, we are trying to create the new African way. Yeah. Because it's been disrupted.
True.
So that my culture has to have rich law for umsebenzi. I don't see how this is how the African way is. Yeah. Some of these elements have been, corrupted by enslavement and oppression. Yeah. And then we take them all in and we celebrate them as the African way. Yeah. An abusive relationship between a father and a son, the father must be tough. It's not because it's the African way, it's because the father is trying to teach his kid to survive in a world that doesn't want him. Yeah. So it's not necessarily the African way, it's a system that was set up, and I don't celebrate it. I don't celebrate that as the African way. So we are trying to create the new African way as we go, and we're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna get things wrong. We're gonna co-parent at the wrong line. We're gonna do all these things wrong. But I think we are trying to set ourselves up, and it's gonna take generations. It's not gonna be now. Maybe your grandkids will have a better sense of the new African way.
Thank you so much. You worked under Malusi Gigaba.
I did.
Who at some point I thought was going to be the next president of South Africa, maybe 2 generations later.
Right.
How was your stint working for government, I don't know if you were working for the ANC, and how did you feel, and how did people feel around you? Because that felt like the moment where it's like, finally, Steve Tshwete's son is not doing this business thing and being a loser. He's coming home to the family business.
No. So I worked in government. I never worked for the ANC. So my career in public service was not political.
Please stop right there, because a lot of people don't know what that means.
Right.
We always assume you're working for the ANC. What do you mean you work for government and not the ANC?
So and it's so true what you're saying, because when I make a comment on something, people will say, but you're an ANC leader. I'm like, how the hell am I an ANC leader? I'm not in any REC, I'm not in any PEC, I'm not even in the BEC right now. So how am I?
Please explain what those terms mean.
So it's like a branch executive, regional executive, and then a provincial executive, and then a national executive. So I'm not in any of those structures that you would call ANC leadership, which are purely political. I joined government, and I was pulled into government because I used to write articles. So
you're a writer.
Yeah, I used to write. Well, I'm an expressionist.
You're a cultured man.
Expressionist. I like to speak. I like to express myself. So I used to write articles, and then Gigaba at the time, who was deputy minister, wanted me to work in his office. Eventually, he was appointed as the Minister of Public Enterprise in 2010 or something, or 2011. And he asked me to come be his speechwriter. They were like other young people he pulled in. I think at the time I was 27. He was probably in his late 30s. So he pulled in a group of young people, very dynamic people. And I must say it was probably the most exciting time for me, because I also believe that this would be the type of person that should lead the country and take us into the new South Africa, you know. And I worked for the guy for 10 years, had a lot of great times. I learned a lot about public service. And then I got exhausted by it, and I begged him to leave, and I eventually left.
You're the reason that he was quoting Kendrick Lamar, basically.
Why is it?
It has to be you.
Why is it?
We're going to be right. We're going to be all right.
Why is it inconceivable for a young guy to be listening to Kendrick Lamar? when Obama says he listens to Kendrick Lamar, no one ever says, oh, man, but when a young guy says, I was bumping Kendrick Lamar.
It wasn't you? You didn't write that speech?
No.
As urban poet Kendrick Lamar says.
Look, what we definitely did as his team is that we didn't want him to be an old fossil.
Yeah.
And do the old-fashioned politics. He had to be more dynamic, he had to be more relatable to young people. Yeah. The dynamics of our political context is that a majority of people are young, and they're being led by old people.
Yeah.
And there's a disconnect there. So if you have a young politician, without making him sound silly, and sometimes you miss the line. Yeah. Without making him sound silly, he must always sound relatable to his constituency, which is young people. So I think he was exciting for me because he really loved empowering young people. He had a young, dynamic team around him, and he just always punted for young people.
Why did you want to leave that space? How was your experience there?
I think I was too emotionally invested. and I think that becomes problematic for my job. Because you must, if you do public relations, you are a person that must have a frank relationship with your principal. And you must be able to guide them on certain threats, and some of them discomforting. So if you are the presidential hopeful, and I'm your PR person,
yeah,
I must say to you, Pen, your 12-year-old seems a bit crazy.
Yeah,
he's on social media too much. That's a very personal conversation to have with somebody, So you have to be able to have a frank relationship with them. And sometimes what happens in politics is that, one, the relationship starts from a skewed power dynamic, so the PR person can never be honest with the principal. Or two, the relationship evolves, and then you become too emotionally invested and you don't want to hurt a person's feelings. And then that's where you lose a great deal of
professionalism.
No, you lose sight.
Okay.
You lose sight. You're not as effective as you can be.
Yeah.
And the problem with political aides and government officials now is that they really like kissing politicians' asses.
Yeah.
Because it's how you stay in the job. You don't tell the guy the truth, it's how you stay in the job. And I, without being disrespectful, I think that's the most valuable thing you can have as a political aide or a government official, is to tell your politician the truth. That's the most important thing you can have. That's the asset, in my opinion.
Before you joined government, you were in business and you went back into business. If you can just touch on quickly.
I did. So I worked for Prime Media. I was a salesperson for one of their LED screens companies. And then I left to start some scaffolding thing.
Sure.
And then it didn't build. It didn't pop off. And I tried a couple of other things, and I was getting there. I mean, you know commerce. It didn't take off as quickly as I wanted. And while I was pursuing that, my writing and everything was something that was getting attraction from a lot of people. So I went into government, and then now I'm back into a space that I enjoy, which is entrepreneurship, commerce, trying to create something out of nothing.
What's Sebenza?
Yeah. Now you're talking. No, this is one of our companies. This is a taxi Wi-Fi company that has a digital platform.
Sure.
South Africa has millions of commuters day to day on taxis. They sit in a taxi for like 30 to 45 minutes average. And a lot of them don't have Wi-Fi. I mean, we take these things for granted because we are privileged. So we give them that, and we give them a platform that's interactive. It has music, it has all sorts of information that they can use. So we bring brands in to conversate with this critical constituency of commuters.
That's brilliant. Thank you for by the way. I hope somehow we can get involved. Not necessarily myself, but if we can help you guys scale what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You never went into tenders, business, political dead.
I would love to.
Why are you doing scaffolding when you can udla tender, Baba?
I was speaking to Sizwe the other day, and he says to me,
Sizwe?
Lomo.
Sure.
So we talk about Steve Tshwete municipality, and he was making fun of me that I've never pursued it. And I'm like, bro, it's not like there's people waiting for me to come there and say, oh, I'm Steve Tshwete's son, I'm owed anything. No, I'm not owed anything by government. So I don't have that thinking that pursuing a contract in government is going to be easy because of who I am. I do try my luck at things. I don't get them sometimes. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I definitely tried to get into the PPE thing. I just didn't get.
Yes.
I didn't get.
I
didn't get not one mask, nothing, sanitizer, nothing. And guys looked like they were doing well. I just didn't get any luck.
I don't quite understand why black kids in particular deem it success to run as far away as possible from what their parents did. Maybe it's what we're taught, etc. It should make sense, even to a normal human being. If my dad was a politician, if my mom was a politician, if I have an interest in business, I must come and do business. That's what my family's there. Yes, can argue whatever you argue, but if I have credibility, if I do good work, it's like, well, it has to be the person. Why must it be a stranger coming to... Why is Duduzane Zuma not doing all the tenders in Kandla? Why is Ukuku Zuma not building a DSTV? Like, obviously.
But that would be a corruption of the system. And that would be a betrayal of the ANC's founding principles. You join activism for your own convictions that you believe in whatever.
Yeah.
You join activism for that. To try transform that and make it a family business is corrupting the ideas and the thinking of the ANC. I don't think, and Duduzane is a mate of mine, I don't think Duduzane is running on the back of it being a family business.
He's not.
I think he has his own views and he's trying to do his own thing.
Yeah.
So I have a problem with the dynasty type of approach to politics.
Why?
That sense of entitlement is completely wrong. If you join politics, it cannot be because your father has a good name there and naturally that you are going to have name recognition and then you'll do okay. It must be because you have your own convictions and there's something that you want to achieve. We're experiencing now the great danger of wanting to lead without having an agenda. It's the most dangerous thing ever. You just want to lead because you're leading. If you want to lead, you must have a very specific agenda that you want to accomplish. So I don't think family politics and family business can be that. It must be something else. With me, in particular, I have a generational mission. And that's financial stability for my family. My father didn't give us that.
Didn't?
No. My father's first job was minister in 1994. He got that at age 55. His first job. From that, he was able to buy his first house. Well, not buy his first house, get his first bond. So get his first debt at age 56. He died a few years later. That bond, that debt was left to the family, my mother. So, and in the context that you speak of political dynasties, it's always in either American or European context where the family has built up some wealth, and if little Johnny wants to pursue politics, he can do that because it's his own thing and he's committed to it. Because the family is wealthy and he can do whatever he wants. But I do not want to be in a situation where I get into politics and politics can dictate your financial situation.
Yes.
People can try keep you in a bad financial position because you represent something they don't like.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be in a situation where I'm passing on that responsibility of giving the Tshwetes some financial stability to my son now, because I wanted to be a branch member and wanted to be the premier of Gauteng. So I don't have that ambition in me to achieve in politics. I have an ambition to achieve in commerce. And there's nothing wrong with that. See, I have, and then we must have another discussion about this idea that the pinnacle of black excellence is politics.
Yeah.
That every time you're an exceptional black guy, people come to you and say, but why aren't you in politics?
Yes. You should become president.
Why aren't you president? Why aren't you a minister? No one has ever said to Mark Shuttleworth, but why didn't you become Minister of Science and Technology? No one ever says that.
Yeah.
So for white excellent people in commerce and everything else, the political thing is not a factor.
Yeah.
But for every black person, supposedly you must be in politics for you to reach that self-actualization of blackness. Yeah. So I don't subscribe to that. I think more black people need to be in commerce, and I think the freedom of black people is going to come from business before it comes from politics. I think the assumption that politics dictates business is flawed. I think business dictates politics. So I think if you want to change the country, we need to get more young black people into business and more young black people employed. That's where you change the country, not from politics.
This is an unfair question, and you're not allowed to answer. Trevor Manuel, when he was accused by J.J. Tabane of being involved in founding COPE, one of the things he mentioned was he's no longer a member of the ANC. I'd like to know how you feel about the ANC currently, where it is, where it's going. What does it mean to hear someone like Trevor Manuel, saying something like, I'm no longer a member of the ANC?
I don't know. I know Uncle Trevor quite well, and is someone I'm quite fond of. But I made a point once that you only need something. You only stay in something when you need it. You only stay in something when you need it. So for the longest time, the ANC was a vehicle for you to be able to use to lobby for you for transformation in the workspace, used to get tenders, used for BE deals. The ANC was that vehicle that was a black lobby vehicle. So perhaps maybe if you succeed enough to that point where you don't need anyone to lobby for you, you've accumulated enough wealth, why are you still relying on a vehicle to lobby for you? I'm self-sufficient. So for some comrades or former comrades, they go through that cycle and and there's nothing wrong with it. They outgrow the ANC.
And maybe the ANC begins needing them. Please fund us.
Yeah. So what do I think of the state of the ANC now? I think it's a process that we have to go through. I think it's better off in this regard, because the inception of the ANC wasn't normal. So to have a few excellent black folks who are educated, who represent a bigger black nation, who are uneducated, that's not normal.
It's not normal.
And then to have a select few who will think for the black masses, who will dictate which path to take, also is not normal. But it was because of the times. So since then and now, we've advanced as the black group.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the masses and the people are more advanced than the ANC is now. So excellence in the inception of the ANC was found within the ANC.
Yeah.
But excellence now isn't found within society. So I think society is now at a point where it's quite advanced in terms of free thinkers, smart people, and we can now begin to dictate to the ANC what we want to do. I think that's what Songazo Zibi and the guys are trying to get at.
Yeah.
I mean, even platforms like this are targeted at doing that. You're targeting at further equipping the public with more information for them to act. So I think that's a powerful thing. If the public is more equipped with information, they can dictate to the ANC the areas that they want the ANC to focus on. I think the time of being led by excellent and visionary leaders, in my opinion, is past. Hopefully I'm proved wrong, but I think it's past.
Do you believe the ANC is still the party for the future?
Maybe not in its current form, but I don't think the ANC is going anywhere.
Yeah.
I think it has to adapt. I think they say that themselves. I don't think it's going anywhere. The political context is not going to be the DA taking over National or the EFF anytime soon. So I think the ANC is something that's going to remain in political discourse. I think what we must adapt as the citizenry is how we engage with it and how we force it to do what we want it to do.
Oh, thank you.
And it's done that before. I mean, you've seen citizens take activism and make the ANC do certain things. Fees must fall and all these things is when citizens are equipped with information and they act and they push the ANC in a particular direction, it actually listens. I just don't know why we haven't been able to rally around the issue of unemployment. I don't know why we discuss everything in this country but unemployment. I don't know why any leader should be allowed to travel and walk around freely without people saying unemployment rates are too high, unemployment stats are too high.
Mfanaga Steve Tshwete no Pamela Zondegi.
Pamela Zondegi, that's right.
Thank you so much for joining us. I think just in closing, I realize you're an artist, you're a visual artist. I didn't know you were a writer. Are there any other tricks you've got up your sleeve that people may not know that you may want to chat about quickly?
No. I play rugby very well, you know this.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, nothing else.
No, thank you so much. I've learned a lot, I think, about you, about your journey. And I'm really hoping we can have more conversations like this moving forward.
I'd love to.
And I think there is a responsibility for people like yourself, not just because of your parents' legacy, but you have been afforded certain privileges. You seem to be intelligent. You seem to be very sober-minded in what solutions may be needed in certain spaces. And it seems you'd like to drive some of the conversations around parenting, fatherhood, how society should be run. I mean, you're saying things like, don't just chase politics. Some of the excellence needs to be in business because business dictates to politicians. So thank you so much. And I look forward to engaging you again soon.
Brother, this was good. I need to come back and invite some friends and have some drinks on the table. Make it more drinks champ-like.
Thank you for Sebenza, by the way. I hope
this is the future. This is going to be like a $1 billion company. I promise you. I promise you. Just give it give it a year.
Good luck.
Thanks, brother.
Solid.
Shup.